feeling of being locked up was something that I felt like it was in a dream. I never thought that something like this could happen. I still can't believe it's happening, and I'm still raw from it. And there I am being put in shackles. I mean, something that I never thought would ever happen. Shackles around my legs, my arms, my waist, and all of it connected. I couldn't walk. I was abused by guards in the jail. I have a permanent scar here that's going to remind me every single day that I get up. I see this scar and I think about it every single day. And this scar is not going to go away. What about anybody else who comes from Canada, from even in the States, and they can get picked up and go through this unmitigated hell? And I just think that they should realize this, and I don't think they do, and I don't think they care.
Every year, there are hundreds of cases of prosecutorial misconduct, false arrests, and wrongful convictions that happen in our justice system. Some prosecutors, police officials, and politicians with personal agendas call press conferences to launch inflammatory and usually false or grossly exaggerated claims about the importance of a given case, totally ignoring the facts in a rush to judgment. Examples are legion. In Denver, Colorado alone, civil rights lawyers suing the city and county of Denver assert the documented mistaken identity arrests are the tip of the iceberg and are an undercount of the true magnitude of the problem. More than 500 people were wrongfully imprisoned in Denver's jails over 7 years, with some spending weeks incarcerated or pleading guilty to crimes they did not commit before authorities realized they nabbed the wrong person. In one case, a black man spent 9 days in jail after he was arrested on a warrant for a white man wanted on a sex crimes arrest warrant. In another, authorities arrested an 18-year-old boy when they were searching for a man 30 years older. A white man was hauled in even when the suspect actually was an American Indian who was nearly a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier. He wasn't released until almost a month had passed, and not until the victim of the crime alerted authorities at a court hearing that they had the wrong man. Today, the Insider exclusive investigative TV series examines firsthand one such case in Wrongful Arrest, What Everyone Needs to Know, Rick Silver's story, and how Woody Igoe, partner at Igoe & Smith, got justice for Rick Silver. On March 6, 2008, successful Toronto businessman Rick Silver was in Boca Raton, Florida, to attend his nephew's bar mitzvah celebration. On his way to the celebration, Rick stopped at the Sears store on Glades Road. Instead of going from Sears to the celebration, Rick was wrongfully arrested and accused of felony theft and taken not to the county jail, but to the maximum security county jail with felons. Imagine the horror that swept through Rick's friends and relatives' minds who had gathered together when they learned that Rick had been arrested and jailed as a felon. Rick had been a frequent Sears shopper and was returning goods he had previously paid for. He had checked out, left the store, headed to his car when he was met by 2 security guards from Sears who walked him to the back room of the store. The security guards unbelievably accused him of stealing and attempted to force Rick to confess to stealing and to sign a written confession, which he adamantly refused. He also let them know he had receipts in the bag that they had taken from him. Indeed, in the evidence list obtained from the Boca County Police, there was one of the oddest and most self-contradictory pieces of evidence that one has ever encountered: a paid receipt of items stolen. He was arrested for not simple petty theft less than $200, but a more trumped-up charge of fraud, swindle, obtained property under $20,000, which is a felony. Because of the seriousness of the allegation, he was transported to a jail filled with felony offenders rather than the more regular county jail where he should have been taken. In this insider exclusive TV special, Rick relates in first-hand detail the terror he experienced locked up with criminals accused of murder, rape, robbery, and sex offenders. Rick relates his nightmarish experiences with both Sears and the police as they quickly understood the gravity and the seriousness of their false arrest and accusations. His nightmare was also compounded by the exorbitant expenses of hiring a criminal defense lawyer to get these false charges dropped and his name cleared, and how a Sears surveillance videotape conveniently disappeared that would have instantaneously proven Rick's innocence. Needless to say, many prominent Canadians were outraged at what happened to Rick right here in the United States. Rick's treating physician, Dr. Barbara Dorian, sent a letter of outrage to the Boca Raton mayor protesting what happened to her patient. To this day, she has never had the decency of a courtesy reply from either the mayor or anybody associated with Boca Raton. Rick had obvious serious psychological damage from what occurred to him both in the jail and as a result of his diminished reputation. Today we will discuss the issues of every person's civil rights and what you need to do if you are falsely accused of a crime. Some of the issues we will cover are: what exactly are your civil rights? How are these rights protected? Can you sue whenever someone interferes with one of your civil rights? Who can sue? Who can be sued? What types of remedies are available if you sue? Can you sue a store and its security guards for violating your civil rights? Today, the Insider Exclusive takes an inside look at Woody Igoe and the law firm of Igoe Smith and how he got justice for Rick by proving a very challenging and tough case, and how Woody's amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve, making sure juries understand how violations of your civil rights can truly devastate a person's personal and professional life. Remember, Woody won't be outworked, and he will not rest until justice is done for his clients. His success in the courtroom speaks for itself. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Toronto, Canada. It is my great pleasure to introduce Woody Igoe to the show. Welcome to the show, Woody.
Thank you, Steve.
Tell our audience a little bit about your firm. What type of practice do you generally do?
I focus on brain injury usually, and through my website, braininjury.com, I was fortunate enough to have cases in Canada, and that's how I came in contact with Rick Silver through a Canadian firm that I work with, and I've represented Canadians who'd been in accidents in Florida quite often as well.
Today we are talking about Rick's case. Tell our audience a little bit about who Rick is.
Rick is a very successful businessman. We're here in his penthouse home, as you can see, who was on his way to a bar mitzvah in Boca Raton for his nephew, goes to Sears to not only buy something but to return a couple of items, who gets arrested and charged with a felony.
And he gets arrested by a security guard.
By a security guard.
Yeah.
For you know, so it's just a shocking descent into hell, as he describes it. Not only not kept at the county jail, but shackled and taken to where the felons and the murderers are.
Yeah. And
thrown in there. Now, in the county jail, it'd be horrible but bearable. But for him to go into that next level of Dante's Inferno, especially a law-abiding man who never dreamt in his wildest horrors that he would end up in a place like that.
Now, from my understanding, this is the reason we're doing this case, he got arrested he was accused by the security guards who actually refused to look at evidence that would have proven him innocent, correct? He had receipts in the bag of merchandise that he was returning.
Yes.
And they didn't want to look at the receipts. And later on, you found out that receipts were part of the evidence that the police had signed into their file, hadn't they?
Strangely enough, ironically, they logged in receipts for stolen items. Okay, so which one is it? I mean, and also here's a man who, you know,
is a successful businessman. One of the things that he stole from Sears was a large picture frame.
Yeah.
Now imagine having that over your shoulder, walking out of the store thinking you're sneaking out.
Yeah.
You know, none of this makes any sense. And so instead of trying to take this thing apart, they simply looked at the video of him shopping.
Yeah.
And it was complex because he was returning items, he was doing this and doing that. They didn't take the time. They just called the police.
And speaking of a videotape, apparently that videotape disappeared, didn't it?
Yes. What happened was Sears claims they gave the only copy to the Boca Raton police. Now what's interesting is that Rick's case was dropped completely within a couple of days after his release from jail. Rick also got one of the quickest expungements of his case that I've ever seen in the history of Florida criminal law. So it all goes to show you that this was a horrible mistake.
He still had to pay a criminal defense lawyer to get that, though, didn't he?
$20,000.
Right. For something he didn't even do.
For representation which lasted approximately 2 days.
Now, when you were originally brought this case, what were your ideas of winning or settling it? What was your strategy?
Rick said from the beginning, watch that videotape, you will see that I did not steal. I also wanted that videotape for Rick to use here in Canada for people who might need to be convinced that he didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
So immediately I said to Sears, find the videotape, we'll watch it. It either is or it isn't. And they couldn't produce it.
And they never have to this day.
They still have not.
You eventually settled this case confidentially, correct?
Yes. And, you know, Rick, I think, is going to get therapeutic, positive things out of doing this show.
Yes.
Out of being able to tell Canadians, you know, Canadians rightfully can be afraid of what might happen in the United States. They live in a much less violent, much less horrible world up here, and for someone to be taken from that world into the the dungeons of the United States is inconceivable to them. It caused quite a bit of outrage up here.
As a result of his experience being incarcerated with these very serious felons, he has suffered post-traumatic stress disorder, which I understand he's still under treatment.
Yes.
Today we're fortunate to have Rick with us because we're in his home right here, and we're going to bring him on right now, and then we'll bring on his doctor that's treating him in a little after that. So let's bring on Rick now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Rick Silver to the show. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Thank you very much.
What a horrible experience. When you look back on this experience, if you had an opportunity to tell the CEO of Sears or the chief of police at Boca Raton, what would you be telling them today?
How dare you? How dare you destroy me? You have destroyed me, my life, I believe, my entire life. How dare you?
As a result of this experience, you have suffered post-traumatic stress disorder, correct? And you're currently under treatment.
Yes.
Tell our audience a little bit about some of the experiences that you now go through as a result of this horrible situation.
I've been put on medication for this to relax, but again, it is not helping. I think of this every single day. I hear a siren on the street, which is either a police car, an ambulance, a fire truck, and all of a sudden I jump to the side and everything comes wherever I am. And I think about it every single day, and that siren just scares me.
One of the things that interested about this case, Woody, was there are not a lot of lawyers that would have taken this case on, correct?
Which is either a police car, an ambulance, a fire truck.
Yes.
And all of a sudden I jump to the side and everything comes wherever I am. And I think about it every single day. And
Right.
that siren just scares me.
One of the things that interested about this case, Woody, was there are not a lot of lawyers that would have taken this case on, correct? Yeah.
PTSD is very serious.
Yes.
A lot of people have the wrong impression of it. In Rick's case, what we look for, how much time passed where the...
Well, thank God he resolved it successfully for you. Today we also have your doctor with us.
Yes,
And
yes.
she's going to explain what a person goes through with post-traumatic stress disorder, Dr. Barbara Dorian. So we're going to bring her on right now.
Yes.
It is my great privilege to introduce Dr. Barbara Dorian. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
I understand you are a psychiatrist.
That's
Is that correct?
Yes.
And you specialize in post-traumatic stress disorder, correct?
I have, yes, for the last number of years.
Tell our audience a little bit about Rick's case, as much as you possibly can, and victims like him, what they go through, and how you can best treat them.
Rick's case, in his description of what happened to him, is an absolutely classic scenario for the development of PTSD. He was exposed to traumatic incidents, as somebody mentioned, over a long period of time, say 48 hours, when he was filled with helplessness, with horror, with humiliation, with bodily injury, and a real fear of death. He was threatened with death in that situation.
And it doesn't matter whether it's an hour, 10 hours, 10 weeks, or 10 years, right? It's how a person reacts to it, right?
Absolutely. Now certainly the extent of the trauma is one factor that leads to ongoing or more difficult kind of symptom patterns to resolve. When I first saw Mr. Silver, the words that came into my mind were shattered. He was absolutely, absolutely shattered. Both his sense of self was shattered about who he was in the world, and his sense of the world and his belief in the rule of law, our authoritarian systems. All of this was completely gone. He was in a helpless, hopeless, kind of floating state, a complete bundle of nerves.
So Rick, when you go into a store here in Toronto, are you kind of leery of security there too?
Well, I actually try my very, very best not to go into any store.
Really?
Even walking down the street. Sometimes I can be seen, I guess, looking over my shoulder, because I don't know if this could happen again.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue.
You've been treating him for 3.5 years?
That's correct.
Is he getting better?
He has gotten a lot better. This is not the person that first arrived at my doorstep. The thing that is so tragic in this scenario, though, is that I feel with Rick, and you've heard me say this, so this won't be a complete surprise, that there has been some permanent damage, and that there are ways in which he will never fully recover,
Right.
despite whatever treatment he receives.
Well, I want to thank you for helping him in his recovery, and you got a long way to go. And I want to thank you very much for being on the program, but I want to bring back your lawyer, Woody, because I want to talk about some of these brain injury. It is a brain injury, and how they're best handled legally as well as medically. And thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Woody, one of the reasons we're doing this show is normally a lot of people think brain injury cases are a result of a physical damage. Somebody gets hit in the head, they're in a car accident, but post-traumatic stress disorder causes brain injuries too, doesn't it?
Yes, as Dr. Dorian might also add, we now know that the brain is changed because of lifestyle, the actual physical structure of the brain. So, in the old days we thought the brain was, you were born with a brain and you died with the same brain.
Yeah.
Not true. So your experience in PTSD or your lifestyle that is diminished because of brain injury, where you're no longer able to work as a doctor or something, your brain, because of the lessening of the challenge, is a different brain. So it, we also see physical changes in the hypothalamus of a person's brain with PTSD in severe cases where it atrophies.
Dr. Dorian, is it possible in all cases to bring a person back to where their brain was, especially when they suffered some traumatic experience, to bring it back where they maybe were very optimistic before, carefree? Is it possible to get them back in that state?
In a certain proportion of cases, that is possible, and I've had the good fortune to be involved in some of those.
Yeah.
Because the brain is, as we're saying, it's very plastic, much more so than we used to think, and so new learning can occur, and that can facilitate positive brain changes.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if certain structures in the brain have been so damaged by what we call the fight or flight response, when it is prolonged, it alters brain function and brain structures. And if those structures have been so damaged, then it is impossible to completely return people to their prior state, their state prior to the trauma.
Yeah. I want to thank both of you, and I also want to thank your client Rick for sharing with us today. This is a major problem. You resolved it successfully. You are continuing to work with Rick, and I want to thank you both for being here and spending time with us. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.